A horse can't decide to do the wrong thing. He doesn't know what it is. And he can't decide to do the right thing. He doesn't know what that is either. He just responds to, will this be the best situation in my interest or not? So once we've worked out, okay, so the horse hasn't got those moral capacities. He wouldn't be trying to be wrong. He doesn't know good from bad and right from wrong and those things. So how do we actually train the horse or teach the horse to do things? And the first part to look at is the learning. And there's two types of learning. There's associative learning and non-associative learning. And in the associative learning, the horse will make associations between situations. So, you know, maybe put some legs on and put my leg on the horse, and the horse goes forward and I remove the leg pressure, and the horse learns, okay, well, I know how to remove that pressure. I put some pressure in the horse's mouth. Maybe in the beginning I might put some pressure there. The horse stops his feet and I remove that. And the horse learns, okay, so to remove that pressure, I do that. Turn, you know. So there's a direct rein that comes on, and the horse says, okay, I know how to remove that. I know how to remove an outside rein, and inside I know how to remove pressure from my mouth. And what's really important is the horse has got the impression that he's controlling those pressures. I think a lot of people, especially when they're getting carried away with the leadership theories, is that they think it's important that they're getting the horse to do things, that they're controlling the horse. But what's also really important is that the horse has the impression that he's controlling the human. Now, you might want to teach the horse who's the boss, but I think it's also wise to let the horse think that he's controlling the situation. Now, that's probably going to ruffle a few feathers, and people say, oh, you can't let the horse control the situation, but you can if he's getting it right. So if I was putting legs on my horse and he went forward and I took those legs away, and the horse was controlling the situation because he knew how to remove the pressure of my legs. The horse knows how to remove the pressure of my hands. The horse knows how to, if I ask the horse to back away from me and maybe put a little pressure down a lead rope, he knows how to stop that. He knows how to turn left. He knows how to control his human. Now, I'm the human, I know how to control the horse. The horse knows how to control the human. We're getting into that beautiful win-win situation where the horse has an absolute control over his environment, and that's absolutely critical for a horse. Is that if you're interested in the well-being of your horse, the horse has to be under the impression that he's controlling his environment. If animals lose the control of their environment, in science it's called an Umwelt, but if the horse loses the control of their environment, something that was predictable becomes terribly unpredictable, and they're just incapable of knowing how to control the situation. You know, there's almost nothing more cruel you can do. There's been experiments been done with rats and birds and dogs and mice and all sorts of things. And what you see coming out of that is all sorts of experimental neurosis that they go absolutely mad, start biting themselves and spinning around in circles. You know, so see some dogs sometimes with some pretty strange behaviors. Some people think it's funny, but it's kind of sad. Same thing with horses, you know, horses with different ticks and doing different things and chucking their tongues around, and people say, oh, that's funny. Well, that's not funny, that's sad. That horse is going mad, losing his mind. So, you know, there's nothing to be laughed about. And these things happen because the horse just has no control over his environment, or the animal has no control over his environment. All sorts of things go wrong. The immune system shoots, ulcers, stomach ulcers, colic, all sorts of stereotypic behaviours. So the whole thing is bad. But if the horse has control of his environment, in every situation he knows how to improve his situation, he'll be fine. He'll probably get fat and shiny and everything will just be fine. He's in a win-win situation. So there's ways, if you understand how to condition responses, you can have that win-win situation. Every pressure that gets put on the horse knows how to remove the pressure. Now, of course, there's the non-associative learning, and that's sometimes almost as or more complicated, is teaching the animal not to respond to certain situations. And for the horse, it's not so clear. For the human, he thinks, well, you know, that makes sense. You know, you tighten the girth, you don't want the horse to do anything, but when you put your legs on, you want him to do something. Well, you have to explain that to the horse. He doesn't know. He doesn't know what pressures he should respond to and what pressures he shouldn't respond to. So you'd really want to understand how to condition responses, and how also to teach the horse not to respond to certain things. So with different desensitization techniques, that would eventually help the horse to get habituated to certain things. So if I was putting the fly spray on the horse and he moved and I stopped the fly spray, the horse would learn, okay, well, if I move, the fly spray stops, so moving works well for me, I'll do that. You know, he's done his little trial and error. He's tested standing still, that didn't work. While he stood still, the person just kept on going for it. So when he moved, it stopped. Okay, well, moving's good, moving works for me. Same thing with the clippers, you know, the horse gets a little bit bothered, he moves, the clippers stop. Maybe he was getting out and starting to run into the electrical lead, I don't know what. But now the horse is figuring out, okay, so if I move, that works. Rearing, same thing. If I rear, legs come off, hands come off, rider comes off, everything improves. That's a good thing. I'll do a bit more of that. And so through trial and error, the horse is learning things he should learn, and you want to be teaching your horse not to respond to the girthing process. And teach the horse not to respond to clippers. You know, there's lots of ways to do it. There's a lot of different desensitization techniques. I get electrical toothbrushes. I start up an electrical toothbrush and I give the horse a big old scratch, and then I start the brush, and the horse is already associating the noise of the electrical toothbrush with the fact that he's getting a good old back scratch. You know, you never underestimate the power of a good old scratch. They love it. And horses just, I think it's one of the greatest things is getting that bonding through lots of scratching them, but not patting on them, not banging on them like you see a lot of that here in Europe. But a good old scratch, and then start the clippers up or the electrical toothbrush and rub it all over them while you're giving them a good old scratch. And the horse starts thinking, wow, every time I hear that noise, life's good. Or otherwise, you get in another situation, you start up the clippers, the horse gets a little bit bothered, someone starts to, hey, stop, no, and starts screaming and carrying on, and then they start banging on the horses, pulling on the lead a bit. Someone tries to squeeze the horse into the corner, maybe the clippers stop every time he gets too excited, so now he's thinking, okay, well, I've got to dance. If I dance, the clippers stop, so dancing's good. And now someone's getting upset because the horse is dancing, and finally, you know, they'll put a twitch on his nose, and then that might work for you, but is the horse making an attractive association with those clippers, or is it an aversive association? Is he thinking, last time I heard clippers, whoa, everything went to hell, so bad, I don't like clippers. Or is he thinking, last time I heard clippers, we got some scratches on the back, couple of carrots, you know, life's good, I like clippers. And it could be the same thing with a show jump, you know. Am I associating the show jump? Is it a good thing? I stopped in front of one once, just got, you know, whacked on, got the snot whacked out of me, and now every time I see a show jump coming up, I go, last time I was here, it all went bad. So now he's charging his jumps, and then someone puts on a bigger bit to try and control him, and he just associates, every time I see those jumps, you know, everything goes rotten. So I don't like jumps. And now, it's a shame, you know, because his dad was this horse and his mum was this horse, and he's supposed to be a show jumper. He is a show jumper, he just doesn't jump, you know, and he's worth a lot of money. So things get all out of control there because people don't understand. They're trying to get their own objectives done, but they're not listening to the horse's objectives and not getting inside the horse's brain and saying, how's he perceiving this situation? You know, and how could I cause it? How could I adjust the situation so the horse thinks that if I jump the jump, you know, the pressure comes off, we come down to a stop, a couple of strides after the jump, come down, stop, nice, let those reins go, give him a big old scratch, go back, work on the flat for a while, jump, stop, and the horse starts thinking, wow, jumping's working well for me. You know, every time I find one of those jumps and I jump it, life gets better. So, you know, you're trying to make the horse do things that you want him to do, or you're trying to get it to where it's working out for the horse. And good horsemanship knows these things. Good horsemanship knows that try to cause my objective to become my horse's objective, or try to cause my idea to become my horse's idea. You know, good horsemanship knows those things. And I think if we add a little science in there and say, okay, well, how would we go about that, and what's actually going on inside the horse's brain? How am I teaching him effectively not to move in situations? Like we have to do with big zoo animals, you know, whether it was an elephant or a tiger or whatever it might be. You know, you'd want to really teach those animals not to move. You know, if you need to clip an elephant's toenails, You can get it done, but you won't get it done by yelling at him and giving him a kick in the belly if you're a cranky farrier. That's not going to work out. So there's other ways of teaching the animal to do things, and maybe we need to bring that into the horse world a little bit, is to bring a little bit more science into the stable and say, okay, how do we teach the horse to stand still with one leg up? How do we teach the horse to not move in certain situations? And it's surprising to where you can get to, even in veterinary situations, or whether you get inside their mouth or their ear or their eye or whatever, things that the horse wouldn't necessarily like. And amazing just what you can teach a horse to put up with if he's understanding the situation. But, if you just go in there like a wild man, it's probably not going to work out. So you've got your associative learning, your conditioning responses, and also the different ways you teach a horse not to respond to things. And I guess the only thing that really separates the two is that magic timing word, isn't it? If I remove the stimulus when he's moving, reacting, or responding, he'll learn to move, react, or respond. And if I remove the stimulus when he's not moving, reacting, or responding, well, he'll probably learn to not react, move, or respond. So you've got to be really conscious of how much pressure am I putting on, and especially when am I removing it, and making sure that I'm not causing the horse to be more sensitive to things that I'd like him to be less sensitive to, and not causing the horse to be not sensitive, or desensitizing the horse to things that I'd like him to remain sensitive to. The ideal horse is really, really sensitive and afraid of nothing. That's probably one of the problems in science, is we have that word called desensitization, and people sometimes think, oh, that means removing all the sensitivity. Well, it shouldn't. That would be a shame, because if you remove the sensitivity of the horse, you just got kind of a cow. So, you don't want that. So you'd like the horse to be really, really sensitive but afraid of nothing. So the desensitization techniques, they're basic. They're often there for as far as, as I said before, when you're working with the dentist or the vet, or you want to shower the horse, or you want to give the horse a needle, or you want to brush the horse, or put the fly spray or the clippers, a lot of things there where you need to teach the horse not to move, which is, we can get that done. So teach the horse, okay, this means I don't move to this stimulus, and then also teaching the horse, but I do move to this one. I move away from leg pressure, I move from hands, I move from legs. I understand what things I respond to and what things I don't respond to, and the difference is very, very clear. And getting those things right, and not getting the horse into some confusing situation where he says, look, some things I'm supposed to respond, some things I'm not supposed to respond. I have no idea which one's which. If I try to move when I'm getting the fly spray, I get myself into trouble. But if I don't move when the rider's putting his legs on, well, then I'm in trouble. So, I'm getting in trouble either way. And now you've got the horse into a whole bunch of trouble. Either he's going to defend, he's going to find some defensive way of getting out of the situation, which is going to get you into trouble, or he's just going to shut down, some sort of learned helplessness, and he's just going to close down there and kind of go into some sort of depression that'll you might have the impression that everything's going all right, but it's not. So either way, if the horse is getting into difficulty, either he ends up learning a defense or he ends up shutting down, and none of these situations are ideal. Now, once you've got that figured out, say, okay, well, I've taught the horse not to respond to girthing, not to move when I put the saddle on, not to move when I'm putting on the fly spray, not to move here, and not to move, and not to be, getting controlled by the environment. And I'll need to teach the horse what things he needs to respond to, and that's where the conditioning comes in. So the associative learning, I've taught the horse, I've gone into the non-associative and said, okay, these things, you don't move away from these things. And being really conscious of that. See people sometimes they're working with a flag or whatever, and the distance between the flag and the horse is getting larger when the horse runs away, and the human continues, but he's still reinforcing the bad behaviour, because he'd be better to make sure that distance isn't getting larger. And there's a lot of things that can happen in there, and if you're not aware of them, you might be teaching the horse to do exactly what you don't want him to do. So am I getting the shaping right? Have I started off with something small and built it up gradually? Or am I trying to go too far too quick? That happens a lot. You see that in some of these, trying to break these horses in record times, as if there's not enough hours in the day, so we need to go flat out and break that horse in before breakfast. And you see horses running into all sorts of trouble, and they'll shut down, and then people think, there we go, he's got calm, he's broken, and that learned helplessness will click in, the horse will just sort of give up. You don't ever want to do that to a horse, because if you teach a horse to give up, or you teach now it's in his repertoire, it's in the things that he knows how to do, and I would probably want to avoid that. Never teach a horse to give up, and never shut them down. Always leave that curiosity and that looking for learning in there, and they're always trying to improve their situation, unless you make it impossible for them, and then they say, "Oh, look, there's no solutions. I got a lot of problems, no solutions. Good night. I'm shutting down. I'm out of here." And that's probably the worst thing you can do with a horse. And I know when I was young and I started learning how to break in horses, I saw a lot of that, and that's kind of a sad state of affairs. Horses laying down and giving up, and they say, "Oh, he's this horse and he's that horse," and what actually the only thing going wrong is that human is just, he has no idea what he's getting wrong. And probably in those days, in the 70s and 80s, we were getting a lot of things wrong. We didn't know that we were getting it wrong, and that's a good enough excuse at the time. Probably in the 21st century, if you're getting it, still doing barbaric things like that, that's pretty irresponsible, because now the information's out there, especially with all this internet and stuff like that. There's ways of getting information, to learn, finding a better way of doing things. Probably my main objective in the 90s was, there's got to be a better way than this. At the beginning of the 90s, there's got to be a better way than this. I'm going to go out and look for it, and that's when I won that Queen's Trust Award in the 90s. Was the Queen of England actually? I don't know what you call it, but it was an award. It was a big check, and that meant go learn, study these guys. She was very interested, I know, in some of the work, whether it be Monty Roberts or Pat Parelli, who've been to her stables and worked with the royal horses. So she was very interested in the good horsemanship, and she was willing to pay a young Australian to say, look, go out there, learn that stuff and bring it back home, and try and improve the situation for the horses. And then that's something that I did in Australia, and then moved over here to Europe, and trying to bring that idea of a better horsemanship, especially in the foundation training. I think that they're great technical riders. I'm not going to teach Europeans how to do dressage and show jumping, but the foundation training, there's some pretty big holes in that program sometimes. So bring that in, and then get the equitation level. There's always a lot to learn in there, and especially with the science. So there's a bunch of things. You almost need a few lifetimes to get this fully understood. But one of the things that's really important, I guess, is understanding, okay, am I clear with my horse? I want responses for this, I don't want responses for that, and the horse has got the control of the situation, and I'm not causing him unnecessary stress or defenses, and he's not learning things he doesn't need to learn, and I'm not shutting him down, and I'm not sort of going too far. Sometimes in the early days, we'd tie horses up and we'd throw saddle blankets on them, sacking out it was called, and the horse would go through hell, and then he'd calm down, and then you could get on him. But of course that has no place in an ethical training system today. Then understanding, how am I teaching responses? How does a horse learn to stop? It's always a good question. Sometimes when I'm teaching riders over here, or teaching professionals, and saying, okay, so you're professionals, you tell me, how does a horse learn to stop? And it's always interesting to listen to the responses. Sometimes they'll tell you, oh, well, I say whoa and I pull on the two reins and he stops. And someone else will say, oh, I block my seat and I say whoa. I say, okay, but how does the horse learn that he needs to stop his feet? How does the horse learn that means stop? And I think a lot of riders must think that it's inbuilt, that it's like some sort of navigational thing. When you buy a new car, you've got GPS, it's already in there, that understanding horsemanship, or understanding equitation, or understanding being ridden, understanding ridden responses, it was kind of built into the horse. Well, it's absolutely not. So you'd need to explain that really, really clearly and say, okay, how does the horse learn to go? How does the horse learn to whoa? How does the horse learn to turn?